Here we go, another audio only with random, non-related images on YouTube. Hey friends! So, I don't talk a lot directly about the shit show that is the United States. I got out of there 40 years ago, I shouldn't care. I've lost contact with most of my friends over there, so I shouldn't care. I don't even have contact with the little bit of remaining family over there, so I shouldn't care. I shouldn't care. Yet, nearly 10 years ago, I began to care again. After 30 years of not knowing who the Speaker of the House was, who any Cuomo might be, just a bit of satisfaction with the capacity for reasonable discourse of Obama, someone called Trump majestically rode a golden escalator down to a golden podium. Well, I'm not sure if it was golden, but why not? To announce that he was going to bring America, that is, the United States, at least at that time, back to its golden age. Much to my dismay, and that of my mate, I began to care again. I'd heard of this character called Trump during my time living in New York City. I might have heard his name before then, but I had never been a news person, didn't watch TV news, didn't read newspapers. The news just didn't catch my eye, so living in the Midwest for the first 20-some years of my life, the name Donald Trump meant practically nothing. On moving to New York City, it meant that gaudy building on Fifth Avenue with the golden waterfall and escalators and I think a pretty expensive restaurant on the mezzanine level. And the Central Park skating rink. And the Central Park 5. Yet one did know that Trump was not a particularly serious person, or at least not a person to take very seriously. Anyone on the front cover of the New York Post with the frequency that he appeared was pretty close to anyone on the cover of the National Enquirer. This oddball called Trump had that Elvis slept with his mom while alien beings looked on, grocery store checkout reading type of fame. Yet here he was, running for president, and the people who were once my neighbors fell for it. Worse, they fell for it twice, and I can only think how embarrassing that is. I once hid the fact that I was a USA-er because of the dirty, dangerous things Bush W. and Cheney were doing. Now I have to hide the fact that I am a USA-er because of, well, someone called Trump. With that as a background, my boss asked me if I'm all right the day after the 2016 election. Actually, he asked my mate, as if I had suffered a terrible loss and might be too sensitive to want to answer. With that as a background, my neighbor asks, the day after the 2024 Trump win, how was it that the USAers elected that guy again after all that he had done the first time around? I had no answer. The truth is that I was, that second time, too sensitive to answer. Now it's been 10 months at this writing of the somebody called Trump shit show. Everything bad that we were warned about is happening. I am sometimes angry, sometimes frustrated, and generally saddened by this. I am also a little apprehensive, as stuff that happens over there gets exported to where I am in Europe and way too often implemented. I have to get out of this rut, though. The example I'm going to use is going to be fairly dated by the time you listen to this, but that's the nature of my musings. I let you all hear me once the fireworks have died down. Not going to clutch pearls while my hair is blazing. Put out the flames, relax the grip on the necklace. Here goes. There was a government shutdown at the beginning of October 2025 because the 535 men elected to do the stuff listed in Article 1, Section 8, and others of the Constitution of the United States decided not to engage in the social, civil, intellectual conduct that would bring about complying with, quote,
"No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time."
Which sounds to me like the 19th century legalese explaining the responsibility of working out a budget for the country that will manage the money, pay the bills. This shutdown is historically the longest in U.S. history. Today marks 41 days, and it looks like it will probably top off at around 45 or 46 days in length. Haven't got hindsight yet to say. Do have the foresight, though, this 11th day of November of 2025, because after some 14 tries, the Senate managed to gather the 60 votes necessary to send a budget bill over to the House. It is expected that the House will approve this bill, then Trump will sign it, and the USA will have money approved to run the government until the 30th of January of 2026. One of the reasons that the shutdown was historically long was because one political party, the Democratic Party, was holding out on their votes in order to force the other political party, the Republicans, to come to a negotiating table and work out some kind of agreement on matters concerning health insurance subsidies. The Republicans, who have been rabid in their opposition to these particular subsidies, refused to negotiate while the government was shut down. Stalemate. In the meantime, time to play politics. Another type of subsidy, this one directed at food assistance, needed a monetary deposit to continue helping around 42 million USAers buy food. Because the government was shut down, that deposit could not be made in the regular way, but because the subsidy is kind of time-sensitive, people have got to eat, the Congress in their legislative wisdom had set aside funds that were specifically earmarked to be deposited into the appropriate account in unusual or emergency situations. This contingency has worked seamlessly in the past. This time, though, the bully with the bully pulpit decided not to sign the deposit slip. The money just sat there. The subsidy account went dry. People began to scramble to find food outside of the subsidy. Local food banks tried to help. Local restaurants offered free meals. Faith leaders opened their soup kitchens. Neighbors helped neighbors. Judges ordered the bully to make the deposit, but he said maybe, then no, and decided to appeal those decisions all the way up to his hand-picked Supreme Court if need be. The meme that described it all was that weasel of a man, Speaker of the House Johnson, I wish I didn't know his name, pictured with the words below, "No food for you until the Democrats let us take away your health care," or something like that. The Hunger Games U.S. edition, the hungry versus the sick. And here's a howdy-do.
Here's a howdy-do.
On top of that, government workers have either been laid off or are not being paid. Oh dear. So 42 million hungry people, plus 4,200 government workers laid off, plus 700,000 civil servants working without pay. Okay, and of those 700,000, we've got the 13,000 air traffic controllers. Great. The people with one of the most stressful jobs in the country coming to those stressful jobs with the added stress of not getting paid, and some having to work another job to make ends meet while they are not getting paid. That must make them fresh and alert while they're guiding 44,360 airplanes full of passengers up and down and around the skies on any given day. And I just have to add that those 535 men and women whose job is to make sure that this kind of disaster doesn't happen through reasonable, thoughtful, ethical governance, well, they did receive their paychecks during this shutdown. And among those 535 were the 435 congressmen who were MIA thanks to Speaker Johnson simply sending them home for nearly 2 months. Well, 42 million hungry people, that's a pity and something that should not happen in the richest country in the world. And those civil servants, they have bills to pay and mortgages as well. What's up with that? I'd say the ones responsible for this shit show are those who were given the job to manage the purse. Ah, yes, the purse. That's where things get sticky here. What do you keep in a purse? Why, money, of course. I mentioned that the Senate was able to reach that 60-vote minimum they needed to move the legislation over to the House of Representatives. Now, just how is that possible if the bad guys who wrote this horrible legislation that the Democrats were holding out on in the name of health insurance, well, they only have 53 seats? Why, some Democrats decided to vote with them. Got to loosen those purse strings and get the government up and running again. Now, pearls were clutched, hair spontaneously combusted, while those 8 Democratic senators decided to join the Republicans in moving this legislation forward as a first step in getting the government working. A lot of the distress came from the false narrative that Democrats had in some fashion managed to make a deal with the Republicans, something about rehiring the laid-off civil servants and the back pay all of them were owed, but that's just how things work after a shutdown. I think there's a law somewhere. That couldn't have been part of the deal, could it? Then there was the promise that a vote would be held sometime in December concerning the impending end of the health insurance subsidies. Remember that those subsidies sunsetting were what led the Democratic senators to not voting some 14 times on reopening the government through that budget legislation. And everyone knows that vote on health insurance subsidies won't go anywhere. Again, 60 votes are needed, and Republicans have barred their rabid teeth at these subsidies over 70 times in 15 years. How on earth does any intelligent person believe that a promise to vote in the Senate is a good faith dealmaker? And that was the contributing factor to the straw that broke my camel's back. Let's say it was the breeze that lifted that straw from the stack and blew it toward my dromedary's already overburdened hump. In defending those 8 Democrats who voted to begin the process that will probably lead the government opening again, and to some dumbass called Trump and his evil cohorts to gloating about how they bent the Democrats to their will, somebody pointed out that part of the strategy, of which I personally see no evidence, was to make sure that Republicans were on record for voting against the health insurance subsidy. Let's have a Mo Sizzler. What? We know that the Republicans are against the subsidy. That's been one of the most prominent refrains of that party. That and the danger of immigration and DEI and CRT and something they call woke and something else they call Antifa and all that other shit they repeat every time they are asked a serious question about something else. There is no sane world in which we needed this Democratic cave-in to the bad guys to highlight that those bad guys are on the record for something we already know about. What I refer to is how we all spend energy in gripping tightly at that pearl necklace or dumping water over our burning locks. Going back to the purse, going back to the money in that purse, why on earth are we getting our panties bunched up over the votes of 8 senators, one of whom is independent caucuses with the Democrats? They are literally 0.000000229% of the current population of the United States. Will calling those 8 people and bitching or demanding make any difference? Why, no. Despite all the hype, they are doing what their bosses told them to do. But aren't we the people their bosses? We pay them with our tax dollars, right? No, we actually give them tips. The real money that motivates them comes from a different purse. And that money is partially coming from a purse owned by some airline or airline pack or whatever they want to call it. What it's called doesn't really matter. This shutdown was beginning to encroach on travel. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy gave orders to reduce flights by 10% into 40 major cities. Why? Let's play politics. Because the air traffic controllers were stressed out and calling in sick because they weren't getting paid because of the shutdown. And Thanksgiving is right around the corner. That is the busiest air travel holiday of the year. Can't be making 10% less. The boss sent the message to the senators. Get the government up and running so the air traffic controllers get their paychecks so they are less stressed and we can get USA travelers to their Thanksgiving meals at Grandma's house while filling our purses. We've paid you, you owe us. So no, going on about those 8 senators isn't going to change anything. Calling and leaving a message on the senator's voicemail isn't going to change anything. Sending an email or even a snail mail letter isn't going to change anything. The amount of your personal taxes that ends up in any of those senators' pockets isn't even close to the money they get to help them run for their comfy, powerful position in Congress. Forget about it. Or do it as part of your civic duty, but don't get stressed when your voice is drowned out by airplane engines. You can almost forget about doing something to the airlines as well, though that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Of course, no matter how many memes are posted on Blue Sky or Twitter X or Facebook, people are just generally too busy with themselves to seriously consider not flying home, not giving money to those airlines who then funnel some of that off so that senators vote in their interests, instead of doing the mature, thoughtful, intelligent work of legislating for the good of all. Some may jump on the boycott wagon, most will not. Which brings me to a wider look at the entire thing. A fellow writer on Substack wrote an essay about the 42 million hungry people mentioned above. Links are where links belong. In that essay, he said, quote, "We are the only safety net left, and we are enough. We are more than enough." I left him a note which read in part, "Perhaps it is now time to stop manifesting our anger and frustration against the broken system, and instead manifest our support for the nascent systems that will arise to replace it." So no, I don't need to be told that the Republicans are doing horrible things in Congress. I don't need to be told that the Supreme Court has made another one of those baffling decisions that seems contrary to everything I was taught back in 8th grade during our study of the Constitution of the United States in preparation for that state-mandated Constitution test. I certainly don't need to be told about the latest shit that some unpresentable bozo called Trump has done. All of that information is now old hat. None can surprise, and almost nothing can be done about it at all, at least not by me. What I want to see is news about USAers resisting through action, not resistance. Yeah, some resistance is necessary, but that might be best concentrated around those days in which votes may accumulate to do something about that 0.000000229% of dingbats currently making and breaking the rules. Resist through action, through actually fixing things that are broke. Resist through helping the guy or gal next door. Resist through being a good person to your family, to your co-workers, to the gal who serves you that coffee, to that guy who helps you lift something heavy into the trunk of your car. I personally want to see us get out of the horrible things horrible people are doing rut. I think it's a voluntary action on each of our parts. I love the word for rut in Spanish, zanja. That word also means trench. Add an R to the end and you have the verb zanjar, which means both to dig the trench and to bury something in that trench. And it is most popularly used to mean put something behind you or finish something up definitely, as in the image of the rut being dug, the pipes being laid, and the rut being filled in. The work is done. Let's move on to something else. The work of being aware of the bad people and the bad things they are doing is done. We know who they are. We know what they are capable of and what they have already done. We even know what they are going to try to do. That is something we can move on from. It is a
tema zanjada.
That is, put it behind you. There is other work to be done, work to mitigate the damage, to repair that which has been destroyed, to stopgap the suffering however you can, locally, at home, at your relatives, in your community, within 20 miles radius of your house. And if you have a larger platform, then go out and use it. I'm not saying that things can't be done on a city, county, statewide, regional, national level, but not everyone has the power or the energy or the talent to manage those larger platforms. Those are best dealt with by us everyday people on those cold Tuesdays in November when a ballot is placed in a ballot box. In the meantime, do what you can. Stop consuming the doomsaying. Stop pulling on the pearls. Give your hair a break. Be happy, and make those around you happy as well. Pardon my French here. Fuck Trump. Fuck the Senate. Fuck the House of Representatives. Fuck the Supreme Court. They don't deserve your attention or your energy. They have certainly lost my respect. I expect many of you listening are in that boat with me. So stop the doom scrolling. Mute those accounts that insist on echoing the horrible news. Only share initiatives that are productive and that make you feel happy. I'm personally going to focus my recreational scrolling on music from the 1980s, classical ballet, home restoration, furniture restoration, and cat and dog videos from here on. Those other ones are just that open rut that I needed to get myself out of. I choose to fill it in, bury that which I already know, and move on with joy. I hope you get out of your rut as well. Cover it over, get on with happy things. It's not Pollyanna advice, it's survival, friends. And please remember to
listen, like, subscribe, and share.
cheers.
You're listening to Radio Revel.